My stepsister tried to kick me out of her birthday party, but then everything changed. I hadn't been home for months. I knew in my heart that it would hurt to cross that doorway again, not because I was too busy, but because even there I carried a bag that suddenly seemed too heavy. As I stood at the door of my parents' house in Charleston, the fragrance of old magnolias and salt filled the humid air. It should have felt like coming home, but it was more like walking into a trap. Even before I knocked, the door opened with a creak. As she stood there, my mother's smile, which never reached her eyes, was the same polished smile she had worn throughout my existence. "Honey, look at you." With a high, bright voice, not wanting to ruin her lipstick, she gave a quick kiss to the air near my cheek. "You still look very serious, don't you? A little color wouldn't hurt you, you know?" I held back a little laugh and entered. My dad barely lifted his head from the page. Not that he was reading. Maybe a nod, but just a normal grunt. Then my younger sister, Brooke, was sitting on the sofa as if she owned the space. She tapped her manicured nails on the armrest and smiled at me slowly and smugly. "Well, well, if it isn't the family's golden goose," she commented kindly. I clenched my fist behind my back and left my luggage by the entrance. There was no point in arguing. I was very aware that I couldn't win with them. The table was already set for dinner, looking elegant, as if they were entertaining a dignitary guest. But it felt more like they were preparing me for a murder. The glasses clinked too loudly. The knives scratched the plates. We ate in this dense and unpleasant stillness. With my stomach in a knot, I nibbled at my roast chicken. Brooke cleared her throat abruptly halfway through as if she were making a great revelation. "So," she added in an effort to sit up straight, "I've decided to celebrate my birthday this year. Just a small celebration at the Grand Carlton. Nothing too extravagant." I blinked. One of the most expensive places in town was the Grand Carlton. My foot. Small party. Brooke kept twirling the fork between her fingers. "And I've already spoken with the event coordinator. The sum is around $220,000. But don't worry, Issa has you covered." Honestly, I thought for a moment that I had misheard her. I waited for my parents to reprimand her for being silly and laugh about it. Instead, my mother simply smiled more broadly. "Isn't it exciting, my love?" My father continued. "After everything that's happened, your sister deserves something special. And you're doing so well." Without looking at me, he added, "It's nothing for you." My heart pounded hard against my ribs, afraid my hands would shake. I gently put down the fork. "You spoke with the event coordinator?" I asked slowly. "Of course," Brooke replied indifferently. "I told them you'd get in touch for the payment." I looked at all of them, feeling something deep inside me twist and crack. It wasn't just the money, not even the entitlement. It was the way they talked about it, as if it was already decided, as if my only value to them was in what I could give, as if I wasn't a daughter or a sister, but a bank. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "No one asked me," I said quietly. "Oh, come on, Issa," my mother said, waving her hand as if I were being difficult. "Don't be dramatic. You know it's just money. Family comes first." I pushed my chair back slowly, the legs scraping the floor, every instinct in me. I wanted to scream, throw the wine glass across the room, finally tell them what they made me feel. But I didn't. Instead, I stood up, smoothed my hands over my skirt, and smiled, cold and small. "Excuse me," I said, my voice almost firm. I left the dining room without looking back, my heels hitting against the polished wooden floor. I reached the front porch before the tears burned my eyes, but I blinked them back. They didn't deserve my tears. They had made it clear that I was nothing more than a wallet with a heartbeat to them, and maybe for the first time, I truly believed it. But I wasn't going to stay silent forever. Not this time. I drove back to my house in silence, my hands tight around the steering wheel. Charleston passed in a blur of neon lights and thick summer air, but I barely saw any of it. I just wanted to forget that dinner had happened. I told myself it wasn't worth getting upset about, that I had more important things in my career, my peace, my own life. But the universe, apparently, had other plans. I had barely taken off my heels and collapsed on the sofa when my phone buzzed on the coffee table. I picked it up without thinking, still half lost in my thoughts. An Instagram notification flashed on the screen. Brooke had posted a new story. Normally I wouldn't have cared, but something about the moment made my stomach twist. I touched it. It was a video. A slow and mocking tour of a small, modest house with peeling paint. My house. My shabby blue sedan was parked in the front, looking even sadder under the harsh filter she used. In the background, Brooke's falsely sweet voice said, "Oh, bless her heart. She tries so hard to be independent. How precious." The next clip showed Brooke and some of her friends laughing so hard they could barely breathe, wiping tears from their perfectly made-up faces. Crying emojis floated across the screen. The caption read, "When your older sister earns 6 figures, but lives like it's 1995. Hundreds of laughing emojis filled the comments section. Former classmates, distant cousins, people I hadn't heard from in years, all laughing at me as if I were a walking joke. I sat there staring at the screen, my blood boiling under my skin. I could feel it, practically the way they looked at me. No, not like a person, not even like family, just as an accessory in their little performance, a punching bag to make themselves feel taller. My first instinct was to strike back. I could have posted screenshots, aired dirty laundry, reminded everyone who had paid for Brooke's car, her college tuition, her endless shopping. I could have humiliated her just as easily, but I didn't. I locked my phone, put it face down, and took a deep, shaky breath. If I attacked, they would win. They wanted a reaction. They wanted me to look bitter, jealous, and pathetic. I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. No. If this was going to end, it was going to end my way. The next morning, I threw myself into work. I buried the pain under spreadsheets and project deadlines, keeping my head down, focusing on the future I was building, piece by piece. Without them, I told myself it was over. Then, around noon, there was a knock on my office door. I looked up and my heart dropped to the floor. My mother was there, all sunshine and pearls, holding a carefully wrapped banana bread, as if she were some kind of saint. She opened the door further without waiting for me to invite her in. "I thought you might like a little treat," she said cheerfully, placing the bread on my desk, as if that erased everything. I sat with my hands crossed in my lap. "What do you want, Mom?" Her smile tensed slightly. From her large purse, she pulled out a manila envelope and placed it next to the bread. I stared at it. I already knew. "This is just a formality," she said, waving her hand as if it were no big deal. "Brooke needs to finalize the reservation at the Grand Carlton. They need proof of funds." I didn't move. "You just need to sign it," she added, tapping the envelope lightly, "so they can charge your account directly." It wasn't a request. It was a fait accompli. They hadn't come to ask me. They had come to inform me as if I were an ATM. They just needed the PIN. I felt something in me splinter slow, deep, and permanent as she stood there, smiling. Memories I had buried years ago came flooding back like a dam break. Being 8 years old and throwing up in a trash can during a school trip and Mom whispering, "Do you have any idea how much this day costs us?" Being 12 and wanting new shoes for basketball tryouts only to hear, "We made sacrifices for you. Don't you dare ask for more." Being 17 and offered a full scholarship to a university 3 states away and feeling guilty for staying close to home because they need me. It had never been about love. It had always been about debt. And in their eyes, I would never, ever finish paying it. I looked at my mother, at the polished nails and carefully styled hair, at the banana bread that sat there like some kind of twisted peace offering. "No," I said quietly. Her smile faltered. "I'm not going to sign anything," I said, my voice quiet, almost eerily so. "I'm not going to pay for Brooke's party, and I'm not going to give explanations." For the first time in my life, I saw it. The panic flashed in her eyes before she masked it again. I carefully picked up the banana bread and dropped it in the trash can next to my desk. I slid the envelope right after it. "This ends now," I said. She stared at me for a long second, breathless. Then she turned sharply on her heels and left without saying a word. The door closed behind her, and for the first time in years, I could breathe. 2 days later, I thought that maybe, just maybe, it was over. I had cut the umbilical cord, explained myself clearly, but I should have known. It was a Tuesday afternoon, heavy with humidity and buzzing with the sound of lawnmowers outside my office window, when an email landed in my inbox. No subject, just a scanned document attached. I clicked on it, feeling a slow dread crawl up my spine. It was a contract from Dylan Morris, the assistant of Brooke's fiancé. And it wasn't just any contract. Hidden in all the polished legal jargon and elegant stamps, there was a trap, a small silent clause that said if Brooke didn't pay for the expenses of her birthday party, the total balance would be automatically charged to me. No court hearings, no prior notice, just a clean, direct grab at my accounts. I sat there, staring at it for a long time, my stomach knotting tighter and tighter. They had gone behind my back and arranged this knowing I had already said no. I didn't scream. I didn't pick up the phone to unleash hell upon them. I simply closed the file, leaned back in my chair, and stared at the ceiling. They thought they could outsmart me, that I would be too shocked, too embarrassed, too emotional to fight. Smart. They didn't realize that the girl they raised, whom they blamed and controlled, had been gone for a long time. If they wanted a war, they would have it. But it wouldn't be loud. It would be silent, calculated, and it would hurt exactly where it mattered. That night I stayed late at the hotel. Well, I managed Windmill House, my second home. My real home, if I'm being honest. The place was quiet. The hallways dimmed for the night, the distant hum of the kitchen staff cleaning up, the only sound. I sat in my office with Anna, my operations manager who had been with me from the beginning. Loyal, brilliant, and more cunning than anyone gave her credit for. I told her everything, every humiliating detail. When I finished, she slowly shook her head, her blonde curls bouncing around her shoulders. "They're playing a dirty game," she said. "But luckily for you, they forgot something." "What's that?" I asked, exhausted. "You own this place," she said simply. "And they left fingerprints all over the crime scene." I frowned. "What do you mean?" Anna opened the reservation system on her tablet and showed me. There, in black and white, was the confirmation of the reservation for the Grand Ballroom, the hotel's largest space, in Brooke's name. Without my authorization, without a deposit, without discussion, nothing. "They booked it without permission?" I asked. I said with a tense voice. "Yes," said Anna. "They used your name and your credentials to speed it up. And Dylan's assistant sent an email to the event team pretending to be from your office. We have the IP addresses. We have the emails." I leaned back, stunned but almost impressed. They had done it all. If they had put half this effort into their own lives, maybe they wouldn't need to suck from mine. Anna smiled. A slow, dangerous smile. "We're going to document everything," she said. "Every unauthorized reservation, every email, every call log. We'll build a case so airtight they'll drown in it." "And then?" I asked. "And then?" she said, closing the tablet. "We pull the rug out from under them at the worst possible moment." I nodded slowly, feeling something cold and firm settle in my bones. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel helpless. I felt prepared. No more guilt. No more doubts. They had declared war the moment they decided that my life, my work, and my money were theirs to take. Now it was my turn. The morning of Brooke's big party dawned hot and heavy, with thunderstorms brewing near the coast. I sat at my desk in Windmill House drinking coffee that had long gone cold, watching the security cameras with a steady hand. Brooke's small gathering had turned into a circus overnight. Vendors rushed in with mountains of flowers, boxes of champagne, and gold-rimmed dinnerware. The staff ran, trying to keep up with the impossible demands. And Brooke, my sister, my blood, was right in the center of it all, barking orders like a dictator. From the monitor in the corner, I saw her rant at the receptionist about the floral arrangements. "Peonies," she said. "Peonies, not whatever these wilted weeds are," she screamed, sending a $500 bouquet crashing to the floor. She stormed into the ballroom next, snapping her fingers at the waiters, scolding the coordinator until the poor girl's hands visibly trembled. I could hear her tantrums resonating through the security feed, even without turning up the volume. It was no longer just bossy behavior, it was cruelty. And throughout it all, I sat still, documenting everything, every insult, every broken rule, every act of disrespect against my employees, my family at Windmill. Anna was by my side, recording the timestamps and extracting camera clips into a secure file. "Do you have enough to cancel it 3 times over?" she said quietly, looking at me. I didn't respond. I just nodded once, slow and sure. They thought they could walk into my world and treat it like their playground. They thought they could silently humiliate me and loudly celebrate. But they forgot who owned the ground they were standing on. The last straw came 1 hour before the event began. Brooke cornered one of the newest waiters, a sweet boy barely 19, and threw a tray of hors d'oeuvres all over his uniform because she didn't like how he smiled. I slowly closed the laptop, stood up, and smoothed my dress with trembling but steady hands. It was time. I walked through the hotel corridors like a ghost. No one paid attention to me, busy as they were with the last-minute chaos. I slipped down the side hallway and up the wide staircase that led to the Grand Ballroom, our most opulent venue, reserved for nights that were supposed to be unforgettable. I reached the top just as the guests began to enter. Brooke's future in-laws were there, rich, polished, proud. I recognized Mr. and Mrs. Lawrence immediately from their photos. Elegant, stern, not the type to be impressed by tantrums. Beckham Lawrence, Brooke's fiancé, awkwardly stood by the champagne table, fiddling with his cufflinks. Brooke herself fluttered like a queen dressed in a shimmering gold gown, flipping her hair, laughing too loudly. It would have been almost impressive if you didn't know how rotten it was underneath. I waited until the room was full, until the music softened and all eyes naturally rose to the grand staircase. And then, without saying a word, I stepped forward. The room fell into such complete silence that you could hear the hum of the lamps. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need theater. I simply stood there looking at them, composed and calm. "Good evening," I said, my voice firm. "My name is Layla Whitaker." Some people whispered in confusion. I smiled slightly, letting the moment pass. "I am the owner of Windmill House," I said, "and I would like to personally welcome you to my hotel." There was a moment of silence. Then a wave of confusion spread through the crowd. Brooke's face twisted, first with confusion and then with horror. I saw the color drain from her cheeks when realization hit her. This was my territory. She wasn't the queen here. She was an intruder. I let my gaze sweep around the room, resting for 1 second on Mr. and Mrs. Lawrence, who looked visibly startled. Then calmly, I continued. "Unfortunately," I said, pausing enough, "due to a series of contract breaches, unauthorized reservations, and behavior towards the staff that violates our policies, this event is canceled with immediate effect." A gasp swept through the room. Brooke stumbled forward, hands fluttering. "You can't do this. I'm family." I tilted my head slightly. "No," I said softly. "You are a guest, and guests are expected to behave." 2 uniformed security guards appeared silently at the edges of the ballroom, respectful but firm. Brooke turned to Beckham with wide eyes, pleading, but Beckham wasn't looking at her anymore. He was staring at me, and in his eyes was respect, admiration, maybe even a little regret. Around him, his parents stiffened, sharply whispering to each other. Their looks at Brooke went from disapproval to total disgust. I made one last gesture to the staff, who began to silently escort the guests out and turn off the music. Brooke stood frozen in the middle of the shining ballroom, furious and completely alone, and I turned, walking quietly back down the hallway, my heels hitting softly against the marble. I hadn't shouted, I hadn't pleaded, I hadn't stooped to her level. I had simply let the truth do what it always does when you stop protecting the wrong people. I let it burn. The hallway outside the grand ballroom was eerily quiet except for the sound of Brooke sobbing. I didn't need to look back to know what I would see. Her sinking to the floor, mascara running down her cheeks, fists clenched in helpless rage. She had lost everything in one go. The party, the respect of her future in-laws, the brilliant image she had built like a house of cards. But I didn't stop. I didn't kneel beside her, didn't offer her a hand or a handkerchief or a soft word of comfort. I walked past her, head high, my heart steady for the first time in years. It wasn't cruelty, it was clarity. She had made her choices. Now finally she would have to live with them. I stepped out into the cool night air, the sky loaded with stars and the acrid smell of rain in the distance. It felt like breathing fresh air after being underwater for too long. I didn't expect what came next. The next morning, my phone buzzed as I reviewed reservations at my desk. I looked at the caller ID and froze. Dad. I let it ring and ring. Finally, something in me gave way and I answered. "Issa," he said, his voice husky, rough as gravel. I heard what happened. I said nothing. Waiting. He sighed heavily, as if I was already being difficult. "Don't push it any further. Okay? Brooke has had enough." There was the truth I had always known but never wanted to believe. It had never been about justice or fairness, regardless of the cost. It had always been about keeping the harmony and making the golden child happy. I had the choice to argue. I could have begged him to finally come visit me. However, I didn't. I simply hung up after a "goodbye, Dad," gently enough. Suddenly, without fanfare or ceremony, the last bond that tied me to them broke. I refrained from crying. I refrained from screaming into my pillow. Anna would have been ready to support me, as she used to do, but I didn't even inform her. After sitting there for a while and letting the stillness descend upon me, I realized it wasn't as painful as I had anticipated. There was a feeling of freshness. It was 2 weeks later. Windmill House flourished. During the period, Word quickly spread that the owner valued integrity above money, stood up for her employees. Prominent clients began to contact us for conferences, celebrity weddings, and business retreats that would make us famous forever. It seemed I was building something more powerful, and mine every day, brick by brick. Then, one night, as the sun was setting and painting the sky a melted golden hue, Dad sent an email. It had only 5 lines, no arguments or spectacular explanations. It simply said, "I apologize for the way I treated you. It wasn't fair to you. I wish you the best, Marshall." Late, but authentic. I let it sink in for a while as I sat there looking at it. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. Because I discovered something along the way that I had never been taught. Retaliation doesn't bring true peace. It doesn't come through shouted apologies or authorized triumphs. It comes simply from leaving, without requiring their presence, their change, or their permission to be free. I softly turned off the laptop, stood up and went out to the hotel balcony. The metropolis below hummed softly, alive with new beginnings and vitality. I took a deep breath and smiled to myself because it didn't have to be like this. Not because everything was perfect. I made my own decision, and I hope you understand too. If you're reading this and have ever been taken advantage of, mocked, excluded, or made to feel less by those who should have cared for you, you don't need their approval to recognize your worth. You don't have to keep being appreciated only for your contributions. You can leave. You are capable of creating something better. Peace can be found by walking away stronger, not by fighting. Did you like the story? Leave your opinion in the comments, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and see you next time.